Hello.
Yes,
Yeah, is Sanket there? Just ask him to make me the co-host, and I can't I have been able to unmute, but I can't uh, put on my video. It's not allowing. The video is off. I think he will have to make me the co-host. Okay, yeah. Video is still there.
I made you the host.
Can you allow me with the video? Somehow I can't.
I made you the host of the meeting.
But I can't put the video on. Okay, yeah, got it. Okay, so good evening.
Good evening.
You are Gaurav, right?
I'm Garg.
Garv, okay, Garv. So you're taking SAT for the first time?
Yes.
Oh. So far, I think you have done a few sessions of WL with JMS, sir.
Yes.
So just to confirm, you have finished till session 4, right? I'll just share the screen so it will be a little clearer.
Meeting session 3. I haven't started session 4.
Okay, session 4 hasn't been started.
Yes.
Okay. Just so conjunctions, modifiers, all these you haven't done. You have done.
Yes.
Conjunctions is done, right?
Yes. Yes.
And all the exercises of correlative conjunctions, all those also you've done.
Yes.
Right? So you are clear with the correlative conjunctions? The neither nor, all those parts of the sentences?
Your ma'am, only fan voice.
So you haven't done correlative conjunctions as yet?
Yes.
Okay. So the coordinative conjunctions and subordinated conjunctions you've done?
I'm only coordinate subordinate on this thing.
Subordinate also hasn't been done as yet.
Yes.
So you have done. So okay. So you had just begun session 3.
Yes.
So okay, then we'll do one thing. We'll begin afresh with session 3, and then I'll take it forward from there. Right?
Yes.
So the sentence structure of session 2, that is clear?
Yes.
The run-on sentences and sentence fragments, all those are clear with you?
Yes.
Right? Okay. Okay. So you will be taking the SAT in
August.
August. So the reading section you have completed?
Yes.
I hope you are practicing the reading section even if it is completed.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so now coming to the chapter on conjunctions is very important because now you know that every sentence you write, you would be using conjunctions, right? So when you're using conjunctions in every sentence you are writing, it is very important to be using them correctly. Where to use a conjunction, where not to use a conjunction, whether the conjunctions are to be used with punctuations, with between clauses, between phrases, or between words. That is important to know because those are the basis on which the questions will be coming to you, right? Okay, so now you've done the fanboys conjunctions.
Yes.
So can you tell me something about when you would use the fanboys conjunctions? Anything? Suppose I said that you and your friends are going to the party. So you used and between two subjects, right?
Yes.
So you can be using the fanboys conjunction and to join two subjects or two clauses also.
Yes.
Say when you use say but. So but refers to now when you use and it means you are adding something. Yeah. When you
Yes.
use but, it would be usually connecting two clauses to parts of a sentence. Now, when you did the parts of a sentence in the previous chapter, chapter 2, sir would have told you about clauses, the independent clauses and the dependent clauses, right? So, uh, okay, so if you are not, are you sure about the clauses or should I tell you about the clauses again?
I think I'll go with the revision.
Okay. Now clauses are basically the parts of a sentence. Now, when
Yes.
you have two parts of a sentence, they could be either two independent clauses. The independent clauses are the parts of a sentence which could be written as independent sentences also. So they are complete in itself. Yeah. And the dependent clauses are those parts of the sentence which cannot exist independently on its own. So it could not form, it will not be forming a complete sentence. It will have to, something has to be added to it to make a complete sentence, and that something would be the independent clause, right? So knowing what an independent clause and what a dependent clause is very crucial when you are doing grammar.
Yes.
Because that is where when like when you are correcting sentences, when you're doing the questions in WL, these parts of the grammar, identifying the clauses, identifying the different parts of a sentence, and seeing whether the conjunctions are used properly, whether the modifiers are used properly, is very important,
Yes.
right? So now when we talk about the fanboys conjunctions, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so, when we are using them in a sentence as such, apart from just joining two subjects, when it is coming in the sentence, they usually connecting two independent clauses. Yeah. Now I can tell you with an example. Say we have this sentence. We hope the weather will be good. Yeah. Now, if you look at the sentence, we hope the weather will be good. And the next part is we plan to camp out tonight. Now, if you were to write them as separate sentences, can you do so?
Yes.
Yeah. So that is where we say that this is an independent clause. So when you have two independent clauses, they would be connected with a comma and a fanboys conjunction. Yeah. So in this case, there's a now these conjunctions, there's another role of the conjunctions. The conjunctions give you the relationship between the two parts of the sentence.
Yes.
So when you're talking about the relationship, now here, what is the relationship we see? We hope the weather will be good. and then we are saying that we plan to camp out tonight. So why do we hope the weather would be good? Because we plan to camp out tonight. So a comma and for is giving you the relationship between the two clauses and connecting them,
Yes.
right? So there is a cause-effect relationship between the two clauses, and comma, and always remember a fanboy's conjunction in the middle of a sentence when you find it, it should always be preceded by a comma. So it will be always a comma plus the fanboy's conjunction, right? So if the comma is missing, you know there's an error. Or if the two parts of the sentence are not independent clauses, then also there'll be an error.
Yes.
Yeah. So the main purpose of knowing these rules is to be able to spot the error and correct the sentence. And you would be not correcting the sentence on your own. You will have options. So you will be able to choose the option which corrects the sentence if there is an error. Now let's look at this. On our vacation, we had no rain, nor did we have cold weather. Right? Now, if you were to, there's a comma here and there's a conjunction here. So the two parts of the sentence, if you look at, on our vacation, we had no rain. That is an independent clause, right? And nor did we have cold weather. So if we look at this, we can say we did not have cold weather. So if we have two sentences, on our vacation, we had no rain. We did not have cold weather either. So connecting the two can be done with a comma and a conjunction, that is no. Right? So even if you have to combine sentences, these are very important. So if you see here, we have negative words, no precedes with no. Yeah.
Yes.
So these are the independent clauses, would be joined by fanboy's conjunction, and there'll always be a comma before the conjunction. This is what you have to remember.
Yes.
So either they would this is when we are using it in a sentence. Otherwise, between when we are using it between two phrases or two subjects, then it will be the simple and, like the two types of dogs with irritable dispositions are the chow and the poodle. So it is the two types of dogs. So we have two subjects over here, chow and poodle. Yeah, like here this one. You can order tickets now or buy them later. So here what are we doing? There are two predicates, that is order now or buy later. So here we don't need a comma because we are not connecting clauses over here. But if we are connecting clauses, I would like to go, but we are expecting guests tonight. So these are where we are connecting two clauses. There we would require a comma where along with the conjunction. Right? So far it's clear?
Yes.
We can proceed. Okay. Now, why are these rules important? Because we have to be able to spot the errors and correct them, right?
Yes.
Now, so when we have two independent clauses, there are a few more things that you have to remember. When we have two independent clauses in a sentence, how can they be connected? Number one, as we saw, using a comma and a fanboy's conjunction. Otherwise, you can connect them with the help of a semicolon, right?
Yes.
Now, when you have a semicolon, it is not followed by conjunctions, especially coordinating conjunctions. So, suppose we have this one. Uh, Jerry is an accomplished writer, and suppose we didn't have this and he and over here, and we just had a semicolon. The semicolon and would be wrong, and without a comma and is also wrong. So in this case, in this particular sentence, what is the error? Jerry is an accomplished writer and he travels to Ireland for residences quite often. So whenever you come across with and or something of that sort, first you have to see what are the two parts of the sentence.
Yes.
So here, Jerry is an accomplished writer is one part, and he travels to Ireland for residencies quite often is the other part. Now, if you analyze the two parts of the sentence, what do we find?
The two independent clauses.
They are both independent clauses.
Yes.
Yeah, so they can be written as two sentences.
Yes.
Now, in your options, you can have different options. It could be like to correct this. Now, if we have two independent clauses and we have an and in the middle, before the and there should be a comma, right?
Yes.
So now here you could get options of comma and, or you can get another option where the and is not there, only a semicolon is there. So that would also be correct. But if you have a semicolon in place of a comma over here, that would be incorrect,
Yes.
right? So between two independent clauses, comma, conjunction. That is what is the correct format.
Yes.
And other than that, you can also have an option where the two independent clauses are separated with the help of a full stop. There's a period. So it could be Jerry is an accomplished writer, period. He travels to Ireland for residencies quite often. So if you have a full stop, that would also be a correct option. Yeah. So these are the different ways in which you could be correcting this particular error.
Yes.
Okay. Now if we look at another, we'll take up another example to make it clearer for you. Okay, so William and I. Would you need a comma in between?
No.
No. So if you have independent clauses, you need a comma. If you have two subjects, because what is it connecting? William and I. So both of them are subjects,
Yes.
right? So if we don't need a comma, we'll have only and, right? So
Yes.
these are the different ways in which the coordinating conjunctions, the fanboys conjunctions are used.
Yes.
We'll come across more exercises as we move on. So this you have to remember when you have a fanboys conjunction, what are you going to check?
Whether it is two forming two independent sentences.
What first thing, what is it connecting?
Yes.
Is it connecting two subjects or two predicates?
Yes.
Or is it connecting two clauses or the two parts of a sentence? Now, if it is connecting two subjects, comma is not required, right?
Yes.
If it is connecting two parts of a sentence, first thing you have to make sure is, are the two parts of the sentence independent clauses?
Yes.
If they are independent clauses, then is there a comma before the conjunction?
Yes.
Yeah, these are the rules that you have to keep in mind.
Yes.
Okay. Now we come to the subordinating conjunctions. Now, when we talk about subordinating conjunctions, what do you mean by that?
Conjunctions excluding the fan words.
Pardon, your voice isn't coming very clear. Yes?
Ma'am, the conjunctions which exclude fan words.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. So when you're talking about subordinating conjunctions, these are conjunctions which would be joining two unequal parts of a sentence. Yeah. So in this case, when you have subordinating conjunctions, you don't need two independent clauses. In fact, using a subordinate conjunction may lead to one of the clauses becoming a dependent clause, right?
Yes.
So there are different types of subordinating conjunctions. We'll come to the examples to get clarity on what I'm saying. So there would be connecting an independent clause with a dependent clause, yeah, or they would be connecting two ideas also which are not equal, that is one idea is dominant, one idea is uh, like if you look at the name itself, subordinating conjunction. Subordinating means one of them is subordinate to the other.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of them is independent, one of them is dependent, and they would usually give us the. So what does a subordinating conjunction give us? It gives us whether the time, reason, condition, etc. So when we talk about time, reason, condition, what do we mean by that? If you look at this particular table, now when we say time, we are talking about after, before, yeah, since, until. All these will tell us about the time in the sentence. So like you said that I went to school before coming to the classes, right?
Yes.
Or maybe they could give when you use because I was stuck in traffic, I got late. So because I was stuck in traffic, if you take only the clause, it is I got stuck in traffic, right? And the
Yes.
second clause is I got late. Now, when you're using because before the first clause, you are making that a dependent clause, right? So when you are using them in this way, you know that, okay, one of them is dependent, one of them is independent. And accordingly, we will be talking about the punctuations also. So now say as much as long as if, that, than, where, whether. Yeah, while I was doing this, it started raining, or while I was walking home, it started raining. Unless all these would be giving you something to connect the two clauses and a reason to connect. So the relationship between the two clauses is again given by these subordinating conjunctions. So the purpose of the conjunctions, whether it is subordinating conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, or correlative conjunctions, the purpose of all these conjunctions is to connect the different parts of a sentence and establish a relationship between the parts, right? Now, say we have this sentence over here. Although the dragonfly is harmless to human beings, many people are frightened by its appearance, right? So now if we remove this conjunction over here, although is a conjunction used, yeah? Now
Yes.
suppose we read the rest of the sentence without the conjunction. The dragonfly is harmless to human beings. Many people are frightened by its appearance,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
what do we get here? We have, if you say, like suppose we remove this comma also. So the dragonfly is harmless to human beings is an independent clause,
Yes.
yeah? And many people are frightened by its appearance. That is also an independent clause. So these two independent clauses could be joined in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah. Now you can also say the dragonfly is harmless to human beings, comma, but many people are frightened by its appearance.
Yes.
Yeah. Now if we don't have the option of comma but over here, and you have although, that is also correct. So what is it giving? It is giving a contrasting relationship between the two parts of the sentence. Although the dragonfly is harmless, many people are frightened. Now what is happening here? When you add although to the first part of the sentence, this becomes a dependent clause. Yeah. So a
Yes.
dependent clause followed by an independent clause, you will be using a comma in the. So this is noted down. When you have a dependent clause coming first and an independent clause following it, you will have a comma after the dependent clause. So these punctuations in SAT are very important, right?
Yes.
But on the other hand, if you have an independent clause first followed by a dependent clause, then you will not be using a comma in the. These are the two rules that you have to keep in mind. So when you have sentence correction or error spotting questions, you have to see that whether if there's a comma, if there's an option where the independent clause comes first, the dependent clause comes after that, and there's a comma between the two, that option is wrong.
Yes.
Right? So a dependent clause first, independent clause after that, there will be a comma in the middle. If there's an independent clause first and a dependent clause after that, there will be no comma in the middle. Okay? So this is what you have to keep in mind. Okay, now coming to some examples, if you see. Okay, so if we look at this particular example, if it says because the desert is so hot, it has few traditional plants, right?
Yes.
So is the sentence correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So we have the subordinating conjunction because in the beginning of the sentence.
Yes.
So, and we have a comma here. Now, when we have a conjunction in the beginning of the sentence, if we just read the part before the comma, because the desert is so hot, this is a dependent clause.
Yes.
Right? And it has very few traditional plants. That is an independent clause. So we can write it like this. Yeah. Now, if we change the sentence a little, the desert has few traditional plants because it is so hot. Look at the second example.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same sentence, but we have changed the position of the subordinating clause, or
Yes.
we have changed the position of the conjunction. So the desert has few traditional plants because it is so hot. So here what do we have? Now, because is the conjunction. What comes before the conjunction? The desert has few traditional plants. This is an independent clause. Yeah. What
Yes.
comes after it? It is so hot. So this is because it is so hot becomes a dependent clause. So we do not need a comma here. Yeah. In the first case, the dependent clause came first. We needed a comma. In the second case, independent clause comes first. We don't need a comma. Yeah. So this is the rule that you have to remember. Right? So you have to look out for what are the clauses, where is the conjunction, and whether there is a comma or not. So in the second case, there are the desert has few traditional plants. If you had a comma here, that would be incorrect.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So now when you talk about the subordinating conjunctions, where can they appear?
Subordinating clause.
Between the either before the subordinating clause.
Yes.
It can be in the beginning of the sentence or in the middle of the sentence. And depending on where it appears, your clauses will be determined.
Yes.
Right? Okay, let's look at this particular sentence. Prisons are relatively recent phenomena in world history, comma, because exorbitant costs. Yeah?
This
Or
is
you can say because of exorbitant costs also. You can say.
yes.
Now, is this sentence correct?
No.
Why?
Not because there's a comma before.
Yeah. So the first part of the sentence is independent, and because makes the second part of the sentence a dependent clause, the comma should not exist.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
So now how do we fix it?
By removing the comma.
See, another thing here is now either it should be because of exorbitant cost or because something over here. There's a now because exorbitant cost. So there's a verb missing over here. Yeah. So we have to introduce something. So because they have exorbitant cost would make it correct.
Yes.
Number one. And so the independent clause comes for the here presents are relatively recent phenomena in world history. Here we will not use the comma. So here the comma has to be removed. Yeah, because they have exorbitant. That would be correct. Okay, now we do some examples of and try to fix them. Let's look at this way. Whenever I go to the store. Now, in the previous chapter, you have you learned about fragment sentences, sentence fragments. Now, is this a complete sentence? Whenever I go to the store,
Yes.
is it complete? Whenever I go to the store,
No.
there should be something after that, right?
Yes.
So now if you see when we are now if I just say I go to the store, that is a complete sentence,
Yes.
right? That can be written as a sentence in itself. Now when we are adding a subordinating conjunction whenever, what happens? This becomes a dependent clause, no more an independent sentence. So we need to add something after this to make it a complete sentence, right?
Yes.
So now you see, even if you have an independent clause, adding a subordinating conjunction to it makes it a dependent clause, and then we will be, and so this no more is a complete sentence. You require something to make it complete. Yeah. So if you say whenever I go to the store, I spend at least $20, that makes sense, right? So or if I said I go to the store, I spend at least $20, that also would be wrong. Suppose the whenever did not exist. I go to the store, I spend at least $20, that also will be wrong. So either whenever I go to the store, I spend $20. Now here, this dependent clause, comma, independent clause, right? So the comma is also correct over here, and the clauses are also correct. So now coming to this particular example, it says because he was tired. Again, we have the same problem.
Yes.
So what is to be done? We have to add something to it, right? So because he was tired, he wasn't able to study all the material before the test would be correct. Or because he was tired, he did not attend the classes, that would be correct. So because he was tired, comma, and then the independent clause added to it to make a complete sentence. Similarly, though he was smart, there again, that wouldn't be a complete sentence. Something has to be added to it. Yeah. So though he was smart, comma, he never cared to study would be correct again. Right. So now you've understood the usage of the coordinating conjunctions and subordinating conjunctions.
Yes.
And the importance of the comma, where to use it and where not to use it.
Yes.
Right. Okay, great. So now we do a couple of questions where you would be using the subordinating clause and the conjunctions. Now you read this particular sentence. So this is question number 1. Your portion is underlined for you, where you would be looking for the error. So although El Nino is typically associated with a sharp spike in annual rainfall on the west coast, though there are other meteorological factors that can offset this effect. Now here there is another problem. If you see, the sentence begins with although, right? And then it goes on to though there are other meteorological factors. Now one thing you have to remember, two subordinating conjunctions would not be used in a single sentence. Now, if you are having two subordinating conjunctions, what is happening? Both the parts of the sentence become dependent clauses, right? And that is not correct. So in this case, how will you correct it? Which option would be the correct answer to this? So you have to be able to remove one of the one. So you have to make at least one of them independent, one of them dependent. So either you have to remove all though, or you have to remove though. So which you have, first option is no change, so we can eliminate. Second option says, now another thing, in this particular question, now in the SAT questions, only the portion that is underlined you can change. So now although will remain, we cannot do anything with it.
Yes.
So keeping although, what can we do? We have to do something with this though over here, right? Now, if you look at this option B, it says West Coast full stop, though there are other meteorological factors. Now, does that solve the problem?
No.
No. So this is also eliminated. West Coast, comma, there are other meteorological factors. That would be correct. But the sentence begins with although this is a typically associated with sharp spike in rainfall on the west coast, there are other meteorological factors. That would be the correct answer, right? It is beginning. Now your sentence is beginning with a conjunction.
Yes.
So you have to remove the second conjunction because you can't have two dependent clauses. You have to make one of them independent, right? And your option is to change, to do something with this part, the underlined part only, right? So west coast, comma, there are other meteorological factors. That would be correct. And D is also eliminated. We cannot go with D because it removes though, but it puts a full stop.
Yes.
We don't need a full stop over here, right? Got
Yes.
it? Okay. Now let's look at the next example. Okay. So here again, you have question number 2, and the underlined part pertaining to question number 2 is for centuries, full stop, coffee houses. But yes, you have to read the entire sentence in order to figure out what has to be done, right? So you can read the first sentence and tell me whether there is an error or not. So what do we have here? Humans have been consuming coffee for centuries, full stop, right? Coffee houses exploded in popularity during the colonial era. So you have 4 sentences. Now there should be a relationship between the two sentences.
Yes.
Yeah. The humans have been consuming coffee for centuries. On the outset, it seems to be an independent sentence.
Yes.
Yeah. Second one, coffee houses exploded in popularity during the colonial era. That is also more or less it is an independent clause.
Yes.
But does it make sense keeping them separate? There should be a relationship between the two, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we will not go with no change in that case. So what option would establish a relationship? Now just putting a comma, would it be okay? No, right? So B can be eliminated because we can't use only comma between two independent clauses.
Option C.
Now, yes, for centuries because that can be used. Now, for centuries, because we are removing the full stop over here and we are adding because coffee houses exploded. Now, do we need a comma over here? We don't. So C is correct. Now, if you look at the option D, for centuries, comma, but. So it has a comma, it has a fan voice conjunction, but what does but give you? But gives you a contrasting relationship. But do we have a contrasting relationship over here? No. So we will not go with B. So we need a because, the cause effect relationship over here. So C is your correct option. Right? Okay, now we come to number 3. They were protested by clergy and women. There were still over 2,000 of them in London in the 17th and 18th century. Now, your underlined portion is they were protested by clergy and women. They were still over. So something over here either is missing or it should be correct. Right? Now, they were protested by clergy and women. That is one fact given to you. Right? And there was still over so many. So in spite of the protest, there was still over 2,000 of them in London. So what is the relationship we get between these two sentences? It is like even though they were protested by, even though the coffee houses, that there was a protest against the coffee houses by the clergy and women, there were still over so many, right? So which of the options give us that relationship? So we eliminate A. B says, although they were protested by clergy and women, there were still so many. That could be correct.
Yes.
It begins with although. It gives us a relationship between. Okay, now if we come to C, it says they were protested by clergy and women, semicolon, they were still. So is it giving us any, is it bringing clarity to the relationship between the sentences? Not really. It's only replacing the full stop by a semicolon, but it is not giving us the relationship between the two parts of the sentence. Right? So they were, so though they were protested, there were still so many. So B would be the correct option over here instead of C and D. Right?
Yes.
So far it's clear how to use the conjunctions, subordinating and coordinating conjunction, and how to spot the error and correct the error. So one thing you must have noticed is very important to figure out whether they are dependent clauses or independent clauses. That's where you're, along with the conjunction, the punctuation is very important. Right? Okay. Now we come to another type of conjunction, which we call correlative conjunctions. So when we talk about correlative conjunctions, as the word says, it comes in pairs. There's a correlation between the two conjunctions or the two parts of the sentence or the two ideas, right? So when it's, and these correlative conjunctions always appear in pairs. So if he says both, then and will come up. Both Ravi and Rakesh went to see the movie. Both you can say both the principal of the college and the curator were in agreement or were in disagreement. So it's not that they appear at the same place, but they will be appearing between the two subjects that we are talking about, right? Either or will always appear in pair. Whenever you have either, you have to look out for or in the other part of the sentence. Neither will always be paired with no. Not only, you always have but also in the other part of the sentence.
Yes.
So when you have a sentence, when you come across not only, You will always be looking for but also. If the but also is not there, you know there's an error. So in the options, you will be looking for the option which will be correcting it with but also, right?
Yes.
Whether will be associated with or. And so you'll always have an as. And so as. And so this happened as that happened. Yeah. Hardly when. Hardly had I got out of the house when it started raining. So hardly is always associated with when. If this happens, then that will happen, right? And another thing, when you come across these words like then, you have to be very careful about the spelling. So they may give you an option where it is written than, THAN comes up. So when one option could have with E, another option would be THAN. So you know that though they look similar, THAN is the wrong answer, right? So be careful with what they give you. Now, what with and? What with this and that can be true? Yeah, just as, so. Both, whenever you have both, it should be followed by and. Right? As white as snow, as good as gold, right? As is always followed by another as. So these are called correlative conjunctions, where these conjunctions will always be seen to appear in pairs. So whenever you have one of them, you will always look out for the pair. If the pair is not there, you know the sentence has an error. Right?
Yes.
Okay. So now we look at some examples and then go on to some rules. Say we were talking about not only but also. Not only homes but also apartments are built underground. Yeah. Whether swimming or sunbathing. So whether is followed by or. Now when you are comparing two things, we are always using as. So as tall as cold as. So those are the comparative correlative conjunctions, giving you comparison. So here also we have different purposes and different rules that have to be followed. Now we can also have along with, right? So, okay, now coming to how to use this. This is very crucial. You have highlighted, make a note of it as important. Now let's look at this particular sentence. Neither you or your brother are allowed back in my sleek house if that's how you talk. So now what do we have over here? Neither. Neither should be accompanied by
No.
no. So it should be no. So first thing is that. Now there's another thing we will come to. We'll forget about this sentence right now. We will move on to come to another part of this. Now, even if we use just neither nor, this sentence is not completely correct. Why? I'll tell you. Now, if we say fixing it by neither you nor your brother, another thing you have to notice is the R over here. Right?
Yes.
Now, when you use neither nor, means you're talking about any one of them. So when you're using neither nor, you have to remember that your subject is still singular. Neither your brother, no. So your brother is not coming. You are also not coming. Right? Neither if you are coming means you, your brother. We didn't say both. We said neither nor, so this will be is. Your subject, your verb becomes singular in this case.
Yes.
So there's an important rule of subject verb agreement. We'll do more when we come to the chapter, but here you have to remember when you are using neither, nor, either, or, your verb will be singular because you are not talking about both of them, you are talking about any one of them,
Yes.
right? So let's look at this one. Neither Ravi nor his brother is come, right? So when you
Yes.
have two single, here we will be treating the subjects as singular subjects. So whenever you are using neither, nor, either, or, your subjects are still singular. So your verb will be singular, right? On the
Yes.
other hand, if I said neither, or if I said Ravi and his brother, then you could use are come, right?
Yes.
So if you are saying both Ravi and his brother, like with both we will be using and. So both Ravi and his brother are come. Now, if I look at either or over here, either Crystal or Julia
Also.
wants to come, singular. It won't be want to come, it's singular wants to come. So
Yes.
these are the little rules that you have to remember when you're using either or, neither nor. Your subjects will be singular. Your verb will be a singular verb because your subjects are singular, right?
Yes.
Take a note of this.
Yes.
Okay. Now, okay, so here we had two singular subjects, right? Now,
Yes.
suppose we have two plural subjects, what do we do? If you have two plural subjects, then your verb will be plural. In both are plural,
Yes.
yeah? So if you have two plural subjects, like say the students and the teachers want to go to the festival, that would be both subjects are plural, so the verb will be plural.
Yes.
So if both subjects are singular, verb is singular. If both subjects are plural, verb is plural when you are using either or, neither nor. Yeah.
Yes.
Say neither the teachers nor the neither the students nor the teachers were present at the candlelight march. Your both your subjects are plural, so your verb is plural, right? Okay, now suppose you have one singular subject and one plural subject. Then what will you do? That will be a little confusing, no?
Yes.
So now the rule is the verb will take the form of the subject which is closest to it, right? So it will be agreeing to the noun or the subject which is placed closest to the verb in the sentence. Let's look at this example. Neither my husband nor my kids. So husband is singular, kids is plural. Yeah. So what will your verb be? Verb will be plural. So neither my husband nor my kids like reading books. Now if the subjects were interchanged, the positions of the subjects were interchanged. If your sentence was neither my kids nor my husband,
Lights.
then it would be like. So the husband would be closer to the verb. So it is singular subject closer to the verb. The verb will be singular, right? So this is another rule you will remember. So we have three rules so far. In fact, yeah. So if both the subjects are singular, your verb will be singular. If both subjects are plural, verb will be plural. One subject singular, one subject plural, what do you do?
The one closest.
Closest to the verb. So
Yes.
if the closest one is plural, then it will be plural. If the closest one is singular, it will be singular,
Same.
right? Now, if you look at this example, either Crystal or Julia, you have either or. Crystal, Julia, both are what? Singular. Your verb will be
Singular.
Singular. Wants to come to the festival. Right?
Yes.
Now, if we have either Courtney, now you have either or. Either Courtney or her friends. So you will have one singular, one plural. So your verb will be plural because it is closest to the plural subject. Right? Are you following?
Yes.
So these are the rules that are very crucial. Whenever you have either or, neither nor, the first thing you will see is what are the subjects? Are they plural? Are they singular?
Singular.
Do you have one singular, one plural? Then what is the verb that is coming out? Yeah. So that is how you spot the errors. Okay. Now, similarly in neither nor, neither Rima nor her sister, both your subjects are singular, your verb will be singular.
Singular.
Yeah, bought.
Yes.
Yeah, bought her costume. So even the pronoun that follows will be singular. So the verb will be singular, the pronoun will also be singular. So whenever you have either or, neither nor, so in correlative conjunctions, especially in either or, neither nor conjunctions, your verb will be singular and the pronoun will be singular if the subjects are singular.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if you have two plural subjects, then your pronoun will be plural. The same rules as in the verb, right? So when you're talking about neither the students nor the teachers, both subjects are plural, the pronoun will be plural. Yeah. Now suppose we have one subject plural and the other subject singular. Again, the same rule as the verb, the one closest to the pronoun. Yeah. So neither Radha nor her friends liked their piano because friends is plural. Yeah. So
Yes.
whether you are dealing with verbs or you are dealing with pronouns, remember when you have either or, neither nor, single subjects, single pronouns and single verbs,
Plural subject.
plural pronouns, plural verbs, one singular, one plural,
The one closest to the.
one closest to the verb and pronoun.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Got this?
Yes.
Oh. So these are very important rules. If you don't remember these rules, you may turn up marking the wrong answer in your test. Okay, now there's another thing related to conjunctions, which we call conjunction logic. Like we were talking about the relationship between the ideas of a sentence, right? So now here, if we talk about conjunctions, they are also what we call transition verbs. Yeah, transition words or adjectives as adverbs they can be used as. And what do they give? They give the relationship between the ideas. So what type of relationship? It could be addition, contrast, or causation. Now addition, now the different words that would be used. Now when we're talking about addition, so if we are talking about one point and then we move on to another point, we would be saying in addition to, furthermore, or if you're giving examples, then for example, and also, likewise, moreover, these are also conjunctions. And what are they giving you? They are giving you the relationship of addition.
Yes.
You're adding a point, adding an idea, right? Suppose
Yes.
we look at some examples. Climate change is causing many heat-related deaths. Moreover, it is leading to conditions that, in the long run, will harm us. Yeah, whether that comma or should not. Right?
Yes.
So, what is moreover giving you? An additional. That this is the A fact is stated, climate change is causing many heat-related deaths. And apart from this, or more, another point that can be added is it is relating to conditions that in the long run will harm us. Okay, here this comma should not be there. You can just delete the comma or just cancel it. I'll tell you later why we are doing that. Okay, now suppose we have this sentence. Students feel overwhelmed with the number of hoops they have to jump through to get to college. Yeah. Likewise, they feel flustered once they get to college by the many demands of the new environment. So here what are we saying? First sentence is talking about that the students are overwhelmed by the different difficulties or the hoops they have to jump through. So the difficulties they have to face to get into college.
Yes.
And next is talking about once they get into college, they are again flustered by the many demands of the new environment. So you're using likewise. So likewise is similarly, right? So one thing is there, similarly this can also be there. Okay, now if you look at the next example, making a murderer is a riveting documentary. Now making a murderer is the name of the documentary, right? Is a riveting documentary. Also, it sheds light on the criminal judicial system. Yeah. So when you're using also, what are you doing? You are adding a point. Now another thing you will see is that this is a conjunction you are using followed by a comma because the conjunction is used in the beginning of a sentence. Right? So whenever you use a subordinating conjunction or a conjunction in a beginning of the sentence, you have a comma followed by the conjunction. Yeah. Okay. So these were conjunctions you would use or transitions that you would use to give a relationship between the two sentences, which is addition relationship or reinforcement. Now suppose you have a contrasting relationship. What are the words that would bring out a contrasting relationship? Like if you use the fanboys conjunctions, the contrasting relationship would be but, yet, right? And otherwise you would be however, although, though, unlike, despite. You can also use on the other hand, right?
Yes.
Nonetheless, notwithstanding, these are all giving you a relationship that the two ideas are not similar. There's a contrast in the idea. So one thing happens, though this happens, that also happens. In spite of this, that happens, right? Like we can say she practices tennis every day, though she is still unable to hit a solid backhand. So she is practicing every day, but still she is not able to hit a solid backhand, though she is not able to. Like here, even though. Now, if you say even though many students apply out of state schools, they end up choosing a local college. Yeah. So students are applying to a out of state schools, but they end up choosing a local college. So even though is giving the relationship or contrast. Chris is an extremely popular singer. However, his voice isn't very good. Now, if you notice here, we have two different sentences, right?
Yes.
So this is a fact giving. This is another fact which is related. How is it related? It's a contrasting fact. So we are using the word however, right? So these were the contrasting relationships. Now, if we come to words like because, as a result of, since, therefore, what type of relationship do those give? Because of this, that happened. So that would be a cause and effect relationship. Or as a result of, consequently, what do these give? they tell us about the contrasting relationship, the cause-effect relationship between two sentences or two ideas. So say because of tuition hikes at the private school, many parents are opting to send their children elsewhere. Yeah. So what is because giving you? The reason. Because of this that is happening.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the tuition fees at private schools are being hiked, parents are opting to send their children elsewhere. Now let's look at the next one. The level of competition in college sports has become fiercer than ever. Therefore, the athletes and coaches are seeking ever more sophisticated training regimens. Right? So what do we have here? The coaches and athletes are seeking more sophisticated training regimens. Why? The first sentence is so when the first sentence is giving you the answer and the second point is coming up after that, therefore will give you the relationship between the two.
Yes.
Right? And therefore will be followed by a comma because they are this one is an independent clause otherwise, and we are beginning the sentence with a conjunction, right? Now in this first one, if you notice, we didn't use a comma after because. Can you tell me why?
Because the first sentence is dependent.
Not really. Here we are using a phrasal conjunction. That is because of, right? So when we're using because of, we will not be using the comma over here. Yeah. Okay. So he didn't play the meter, so he received a ticket. This is so is a fanboys conjunction.
Yes.
It is also giving you the cause effect relationship. This happened, so that happened.
Yes.
Right. So these are the conjunctions which are giving you the cause effect. What are the conjunctions giving you the cause effect relationship? Because, therefore, consequently, so, right?
Yes.
So these conjunctions, as I said earlier also, the purpose of the conjunctions is not only joining the sentences, but also specifying the relationship between the sentences. Now, if you look at another type of conjunction, say first or firstly, then, afterwards, finally, consequently, what would these give you? The sequence.
Yes.
Firstly, secondly, finally, this will be giving you the sequence in which things are happening. Say, after 3 hours of waiting in the lobby, we were finally admitted to the office. Yeah. So after, that is also giving you a relationship that after so many hours, that is a say the subordinating conjunction, and finally giving you the sequence.
Yes.
As a time period is being indicated. Say first Carolyn completed an ACT prep course, then she took the test itself. So first and then both are giving you the relationship of time
Yes.
or the sequence. Now, when you end an essay, what do you do? Or you end a paragraph or a point you are concluding in conclusion. So in conclusion is giving you, okay, now finally this is what I have to say, right? In
Yes.
conclusion, just as other types of ACT SAT questions, transition questions follow a predictable set of rules. Yeah. So wrapping up in conclusion, that is when you're using words like in conclusion, finally, or say, these are giving you the idea that, okay, this is the final set of thoughts that you are putting, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, we went through a lot of rules, right? So
Yes.
when you are coming across these transition words, what are the things that you have to look for?
Relationship between
The
the
relationship between the sentences, right? Now, if you have a word which is, say, it is underlined and it is not giving you the correct relationship, that will be an incorrect option. That will be
Yes.
an error. Now, another thing you will be in your options, another thing you have to look out for is a synonym of the word that you are looking for. Now, when you come across the questions, you have to first read the question and figure out what type of word will go with, right? And maybe in the options you don't have the exact word that you are looking for, but a similar word is there. So you go with that particular word, right? So you will
Yes.
be looking at the relationships. You will say whether you need an addition or contrast or something which gives you the cause effect relationship. Accordingly, you will be choosing. Now, one thing you have to be very clear about. So when you are choosing your options, say for not only for the this type of question, for any type of question in SAT, one thing you have to remember when you are given the options, there may be two options which are grammatically correct, right?
Yes.
So when choosing between the two options, always choose the one which is concise. Whether it is for the transition word or it is for sentence correction or addition of sentences, any grammar question, you will always choose the option which is concise.
Yes.
This is very important to know. So you can underline and note it. Then always use the concise option, or the one which is shorter, uses less a number of words to say the same thing, right?
Yes.
So using the process of elimination, let's look at these questions. So we have Jeremy never studies. Also, he gets perfect grades on his exam. Now, what is the relationship between, now if we just remove also, what is the relationship we get between these two sentences?
Jeremy never studies. He gets perfect grades on his exam.
So what is the relationship? He never studies.
Yes.
So suppose you didn't have also and you just had the two sentences, Jeremy never studies, he gets perfect grades. So how would you connect them?
Options. Or
Hmm?
option C.
Yes, option C would be. So if you were to connect them on your own and you didn't have any option, you could say, but he gets perfect grades.
Yes.
Yeah. So what type of relationship did you get? Contrasting relationship.
Contrast.
So you need a conjunction which gives the contrast. So however is your correct option. So therefore would give you the cause effect relationship. Likewise would be something which would add to something or give a similar reason. So however is the only option which is giving you the contrast. Now let's look at the next one. Josephine enjoyed volunteering at the local animal shelter after school,
Yes.
and it was not difficult to meet her school's annual volunteerism requirement. So, what type of a relationship do we have over here?
Causation.
Hmm?
Causation.
Cause effect relation. So you need a word which gives you the causation, right? So
Yes.
no A will be eliminated. We don't need despite this.
Option B.
Similarly, also will be wrong. Yeah. Now you are left with B and C. Now if you look at B as a consequence of this
It was not
and
difficult.
F. Now both of them are giving you cause effect relationship,
Yes.
right? So which one will you go with? The one which is concise.
Yes. Option C.
Yeah? So we will not use B because too many words are being used. We will go with C, right? So not that B is incorrect, B is also correct. It is giving you the relationship that you are looking for, but
But it's too long.
concise.
Yes.
Right? So when you are looking for your answer, when you have two options which are correct, you will be looking for the one which is
Smaller.
always concise, that is uses less words, right?
Yes.
So now it's clear how to deal with these questions,
Yes.
right? Okay, so now if I look at the, okay, so now question number 3, 4, and 5 you will be able to do on your own for homework,
Yes.
right? Okay, so you can mark these, you attempt these for homework.
Yes.
Okay, so now these were what we talked about. Now these are all pertaining to, all these questions are pertaining to sentence structure, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now we move on to something more of sentence structure. Do you want a water break? Or otherwise we will continue.
Now we can continue.
Do you want to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Okay, fine. So you can come back quickly so that we can continue.
Marbles corrected.
Okay. Okay, so now in session 2, you had done the structure of sentences. Yeah. Session 3, we did about conjunctions, how to connect different ideas and the relationship between the different ideas and transitions and conjunctions that are required, and some rules for correlative conjunctions, right?
Yes.
Okay, now we have another thing in the sentence which is very important, is the structure of the sentence. So you will be getting questions which will test you on whether you are able to identify the parallel structure of a sentence. Now, when you are writing a sentence, or even if you're talking about words in a list, you will always come across words which are of the same type. Yeah, when you're talking about words in a list, what can be compared? This is, and the parallel structure of a sentence is also very important when you are comparing different ideas or different phrases. The parallel structure comes in. What do you mean by parallel structure? It would mean that the items in a list or the different parts of a sentence are in the same grammatical form, right?
Yes.
It will be the same grammatical form. Now, when we talk about same grammatical form, what do you mean? Let's say you have a list of nouns or the names of things. So all of them should be the names of things.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, suppose we have verbs coming into the middle of nouns. That will be a wrong structure. Yeah, not acceptable. If you have verbs, all of them would be verbs. If you're using gerunds, I hope you know what gerunds are.
No, I don't remember.
Hmm?
I
Okay.
don't remember.
Gerunds are words which are used, which are actually verbs, but can be used as nouns.
Okay.
Say swimming. Now, if you say swimming, swimming can be used as a noun as well as a
Yes.
verb.
Verb.
Yeah. Running,
A verb.
he was running, and the event of running,
Yes.
right? So these are gerunds are usually words which are verbs, but they are the ing words which can be used as nouns. So if
Yes.
you have ing words, you have to see that are they all gerunds?
Gerund.
Yeah. So if you have a inconsistency in the structure, that means there's an error in it,
Yes.
right? And when you have a list, you could it could be ending with and. The last item in the list will always have a comma and before it, right? So then you know now when you talk about a list, first we said that the same type. And suppose you have different like some activities and some names of things. You will not be putting both of them into the same list.
Yes.
You will be creating separate lists from it. So these are the different types of errors that you will be coming across. Now coming to the examples to explain these errors, if you see. Say, I went to the greenhouse and purchased petunias, tulips, and chrysanthemums for the garden. Now, we have a list of things over here: petunias, tulips, and chrysanthemums. So, if you see, all are nouns, first thing, and all are names of flowers,
Yes.
right? So, there is no error in this list.
Yes.
Now, if you look at this one, the second one, my favorite sports are hockey and swimming. Now, is this correct?
Yes.
Why? Because hockey is a noun. And if you look at swimming, this is where this is a gerund.
Gerund.
So this is used as a noun,
Now.
right? So
Yes.
my favorite sports are hockey and swimming is also correct.
Yes.
Now, one thing important when you are talking about parallel construction is when it comes to comparisons. If you look at this particular sentence, I think my grandmother's cookies are better than anyone else's. So what are we comparing?
Grandma's cookies.
Grandmother's cookies and anyone else's. Now here, to avoid repetition, cookies has been eliminated. So what are we comparing here? Grandmother's cookies are better than anyone else's cookies. That is correct, right? Now,
Yes.
if we say anyone else, the apostrophe S if it is not there. My grandmother's cookies are better than anyone else. Will that be correct?
No.
No. Because what are we comparing? We are comparing grandmother's cookies.
Grandmother's
There has
cookies.
to be a possessive over here, somebody else's cookies. So
Yes.
cookies are whose? Grandmother's and someone else's. We can't say that grandmother's cookies can be compared to somebody,
Yes.
right? So these are things that may crop up and you have to be able to point out the errors and choose the correct option in that if there's an error. Oh. Now we come to some sentences where we look at the errors as such. Okay, say we have this sentence over here. Egya likes laughing, singing, and to write. Now, what are the form of these verbs? He likes laughing, singing, and to write. So if you are using the ing words over here, this should also be the same form.
Yes.
So it's laughing, singing, and writing.
Writing.
Right?
Yes.
So we will be corrected with the use of laughing, singing, writing. Now we'll, if we have another example. So you must get results quickly, efficiently, and cheaply.
Yeah.
This would be correct? Yeah? Now, what was the original sentence? You must get results quickly, efficiently, and at a low cost. So quickly, efficiently, and at a low cost, that is not in the parallel structure, right? If you're using quickly, efficiently, all of them should be the same form of the adverb. So now we need a word for low cost. So cheaply would be able to replace that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now let's look at this sentence. Sonia is known for her independence, her honesty, and being intelligent. Now, what are these words? Independence, honesty. What form are they? They are nouns,
No.
right? So
Yes.
being intelligent, that is not in the noun form. We need a noun form of being intelligent. What would we use? We could use intelligence,
Yes.
right? So independence, honesty, intelligence would be the correct parallel structure over here, right? So now
Yes.
these were the lists that we talked about. Okay. Now say we have this sentence. I enjoy reading novels, playing poker, and to ride my bicycle along the Olengati River. So reading novels, playing poker, what should you be over here? Riding my bicycle,
My bicycle.
right?
Yes.
So far it's easy. So we have he likes to eat but not cooking.
He likes to.
We have he likes to eat but not cooking. How can you correct this? So no. Now suppose a particular part of it was underlined. Say likes to eat was underlined.
He likes eating but not cooking.
But not cooking. And on the other hand, if not cooking was underlined, then you would change
He
this.
likes to eat but not cook.
Not to cook.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. Now if we come to the sentence structures. So this is a simpler form of the sentence structure. The SAT writing section challenges students and frustration is found in them. Right? You see, the SAT writing section challenges students
And
frustration is found in them. So what is the SAT writing section doing? It is challenging
students.
So what is the now when we talk about a parallel structure in a sentence, first thing we have to identify is the two parts of the sentence.
Yes.
Now the two parts of the sentence would be, now in this case, you find a conjunction. Look for a conjunction. Now what is the conjunction doing? Conjunction is connecting these two phases over here. Challenges students and does what? Right? So now challenges in what form? It is a verb and a noun form.
Yes.
Verb plus noun gives you the first part. Now if you look at the second part, frustration. What is frustration?
Yeah.
Frustration is noun. Is would be of verb form, right? Found in them. Found will be adjective, right?
Yes.
In would be a preposition. Them is a pronoun. So instead of just verb and noun, we have noun plus verb plus adjective plus pronoun. Right? Preposition also. Now this is quite a long drawn out part of a phrase.
Yes.
So what would we do? We would want to bring it to the form of the first part. Yeah. So verb plus noun format. So what can we use as a verb plus noun? Verb plus noun, or noun can be replaced with pronoun. We can say frustrates them.
Yes.
If we use frustrates them, we have frustrates would be the verb and them would be the pronoun which is used in place of the noun. Right? So
Yes.
that will give you a parallel structure to the sentence. So this is what we talk about when we are talking about the parallel structure in a sentence. So here there were two phrases connected by a conjunction, and we change the two phrases into the same form.
Yes.
Now similarly, if you have two clauses, what will you do? You will apply the same method, right?
Yes.
So when we are talking about clauses, let's come to an example here. Okay. Here also we have something like phrases. Rand Paul supports the repeal of the Affordable Act as well as that the Department of Education should be eliminated. Now here also we have what are the two items in the sentence or the two phrases that we are talking about. The first thing, what is the subject? Rand Paul supports, right? So
Yes.
what does it support? The repeal of the Affordable Care. Yeah. Now here you have as well as. So this is the conjunction connecting the two phases or the
Yes.
two parts. Now what do we have in the next part? That the Department of Education should be eliminated. So the first part, what is the form? The repeal. Now when you say when you have an article before a word, you mean that would be a noun. Yeah. The repeal of the Affordable Care Act. So this is also a noun. And here you have what? A preposition of an article,
Yes.
right? So noun, preposition, article, noun. That's your form. In your second part, what is the form you have? That the Department of Education should be eliminated. Yeah. So that the department should be eliminated. So you have something of a preposition. This acts as a preposition. Now, what else do we have? We have a noun, Department of Education. Right? Should
Yes.
be eliminated is the verb. What should be done? So you have a noun verb. Now, to get both to the same form, we need to convert the second part into the format of the first part.
Yes.
Yeah. So what can we do? Should be eliminated has to be converted into the noun form.
Yes.
Yeah. So what can we say?
Elimination.
The elimination of. Yeah. The repeal of, the elimination of the Department of Education. Right. So the two parts of the sentence or the two phrases that we are using in the sentence. In the middle, we have the conjunction. We convert both of them to the same parallel structure. Got it?
Yes.
So you have to, what do you identify first? First you identify the
The subjects. The
All
nouns.
support. What does it support? Number one, the first part of the sentence. Then you have the conjunction coming in, and then you have the second part of the sentence. Both of them should be in the same form. So first break the sentence down. So the first thing is what are you doing? Breaking the sentence down, looking at the structure, then comparing the structure of the two parts, getting the structure of the second part to the structure of the first part, right? So this
Yes.
is what your parallel structure would be. So you will be getting some questions with errors, and say this one. In her spare time, Renata spoke to the iguanas, ran with the wild boars, and was climbing coconut trees. This is a list of activities, right? In her spare time, Renata did all these things, spoke to the iguanas, ran with the boars, and was climbing coconut trees. It's not in the same format, right?
Yes.
So what will it be? We have now. If you look at these, they are all in the past tense.
Past tense.
Yeah.
So the climbing should be also turned into the past
With
tense.
the boars, this will be climbed coconut trees.
Yes.
So all in the same tense.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Now another thing you have to take note of is when you're talking about a list of things in a sentence, whether it is after the colon or now lists are usually followed by a colon. Yeah. When you bring up a list or a definition in a sentence, you use a colon. So whether the list is before the colon, whether there is a colon or no colon, the rule remains the same. Yeah. So
Yes.
all the items on the in the list will be treated as the same. Okay, now if you look at this sentence, there's something more to this sentence. Read it carefully. It says Max loved only three, right?
Yes.
Modern airplanes, fast cars, and
fishing.
now, do you find any error over here?
Fishing.
Hmm? No, this it says Max loved three things. Now, if you look at model airplanes and fast cars, they are objects, right? And going fishing is an activity. So when you are comparing, you will not be comparing objects to activities. So we will be separating the list. We will keep the two objects in one list and we will take going fishing into another sentence. So he also likes fishing, you can say, or he also likes to go fishing, right? So yeah, you can put it this way. Max loved model airplanes and cars. He also loved to go fishing. Yeah.
Yes.
Whenever you have a list, make sure that all the items in the list are belong to the same family and are in the same grammatical form.
Yes.
Right? Now, this is another simple example. The dancer was praised not only for her strength, but also in her agility.
Yes.
It will not be in her agility, it will be for her agility, for her strength, for her agility, right? Okay, now we come to a little complicated sentence. John wanted to buy a new car partly because of his need to have a reliable vehicle, but mostly because of his greatly desiring to look cool. Now you notice the two underlined parts of the sentence,
Yes.
right? So either they are correct or there is an error. So could there be an error in this sentence? We are talking about parallel structures, right? Keep that in mind. So John wanted to buy a new car. We are not going to touch that. Partly because of his need to have a reliable vehicle, but mostly because of his
His desire to
desire. It will not be greatly desiring. It will follow the structure of the first part, that is his need because of his desire.
yes.
Right? So that was also not really complicated. So now you know how to go about the parallel structure strategy.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you do? First thing, break down the sentence. Identify the items that you are talking about, whether if it is a list, then the items in the list. If it is a sentence, then the grammatical form of the two parts of the sentence.
Yes.
Right? So you have to first identify the parts of the sentence, break it down. see what the main subject is and what is coming up after that. Compare the items or the parts of the sentence. They should be in the same grammatical form. Keeping this in mind, you will be able to correct the errors. So identify, break down, compare. That is what you have to do. Right?
Yes.
Now we look at this example over here. So what do you think about this? This is a complete sentence. Now the first part of the sentence is to compete with the music, to complete the music program, a student must present
Option B.
one vocal performance, one instrumental performance, and what will this be? Should now, if you look at the other items, one vocal, one instrumental performance should be in the same format,
Yes.
right? So which one is your answer?
Option B.
And one original composition, right?
Yes.
So this also says one original composition, but it says with. We don't need with. We need
One.
right, and so we can easily eliminate that. Okay. Now you can answer the second and third one also.
Yes.
You have an underlined part, so you know that you have to change this part.
Yes.
Compare this part to the rest of the sentence. So what would be the correct answer?
Option B.
Option
B.
B. B or D? Which one are you talking about?
B for boy.
Okay, B for boy. Okay. Let's look at the sentence. James Barrie, the author of Peter Pan and other plays, is noted for portraying adulthood as unpleasant and childhood
As people
as, would you use being glorious? Here, what do we have? Adulthood as unpleasant.
Yes.
So we have a noun plus
Yes.
a conjunction plus an adjective.
Yes.
Right? Now, if you use this one, we have a noun, we have a conjunction, and we have being glorious. So we have a verb along with it.
Yes.
Yeah. So which would be a better option?
C.
C would be a better option, right?
Yes.
So we have to see whether the two, whether what we are changing fits into the same format or not.
Yes.
Any extra word will not be the same format, right?
Yes.
Now you look at the next one. What do you think will be the answer?
Option D. D.
Okay, now here one thing you will notice at the McDonald's, the whole thing is not written in the options. So it will be eating at the McDonald's, the whole thing you have to change.
Eat means
Your option will be D. Okay, let's see if it fits in. Now, what is the rest of the sentence? Visitors to my hometown in the middle of nowhere can experience. Now, this is the part that describes or gives a subject. Now, rides on the bus, drinks at the tavern, right? Now you have at the McDonald's over here. So at the tavern and on the bus is comparable to at the McDonald's. So do we use at means, eat means? What will we have? Here it says rides, drinks. So only noun.
Option C.
There's no verb over here. So we will go with C, not B. Right? So you have to be able to analyze the sentence, break it down, analyze it properly.
Yes.
Right? And did you compare with these two phases?
Yes.
Yeah. So if you compare with these two phases, you would have broken down this into parts. Right? If you break this down into parts, you will get the comparative parts that you have over here. So here we are talking about nouns and not a verb. So we will be using a noun instead of a verb, right? So now you understood what you have to do, the strategy that you have to follow. Break down, compare, get to the correct answer. Comparing each and every word of the underlined part or the parts of the sentences is important. Okay, one last one over here. I think I won't leave it for homework. Okay, we live and work among it all. Disturbed sleep, plays tempers, reduced working efficiency, and does an unknown amount of actual physical harm. Noise has become a curse of modern civilization.
Option C.
What do we have here? Option C, reduces working efficiency, right?
Yes.
So how did you get to it? What were the other things that you were looking at? It disturbs
Sleep.
phrase, temper. So obviously reduced working efficiency is wrong. And you can eliminate reducing working efficiency and reduced efficiency. So reduces working efficiency, right?
Yes.
Okay, so far everything is clear?
Yes.
Yeah? Any doubts so far?
No.
Yeah? So we will be doing more exercises when we come to the actual questions. We are just building upon concepts.
Yes.
Right? So now you know how to use the conjunctions, the rules of conjunctions. You will revise them,
Yes.
right? And next we did the parallel structures, which is very important in a sentence correction question. Okay, now yeah, we still have something. Now we will move on to something which is called modifiers. What do you think modifiers are? Suppose I say, I give you a sentence, Garv, who is preparing for SAT, attends classes every day. Yeah. Now, in this particular sentence, if you see, the subject is Garv, and if I say the Garv attends classes every day, that's also a complete sentence.
Yes.
Now, what did I add to the sentence? Who is preparing for SAT? Yeah, who is preparing for SAT?
Yes.
So what is that this thing which I added? It's an additional information which is modifying the sentence. Either it is modifying the subject or it is modifying the sentence completely. Right?
Yes.
What is the modifier doing then? It is giving you additional information. That is the basic purpose of a modifier. Right?
Yes.
So a modifier could be a single word, a phrase, or a clause that provides description in a sentence. Right?
Yes.
It will be giving you additional information. Now, if we talk about something like adjective modifiers, they can tell you something like what kind, say you talking about a thing. So what type of a thing is it? Or which one? Give me that book. Or give me the book which is on the table. So give me the book which is on the table is adding information telling you which book. Yeah. Now it can tell you about how many, how much. So any adjective which is giving you an additional information about a noun or pronoun, that could be a modifier. Or you could have adverb modifiers which can tell you when, where, how many. Now here even the conjunctions can be used as modifiers depending upon the role it is playing. Yeah. So when you're talking about modifiers, we are talking about something that is giving you some additional information about the noun or the adverb even, or even about the verb, right? But a problem arises when they are not used correctly. So suppose we are talking about, suppose there are two nouns in the sentence and the modifier turns up with the noun which is not intended to be turned up, not intended to be described. Then that is where errors come up. Say we have this sentence, the boy. Now, if we talk about modifiers, say giving you additional information, the boy riding up and down the street is tired, right? Now, what is subject? The boy. What is the boy doing? He is tired. Yeah. Now, if we join these two parts of the sentence, it is also correct. Now, what did we add in the middle? Riding up and down the street. So this is giving you an additional information of why he is tired.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if you look at the next one, the cabinet stuffed to the brim needed to be organized. So what needed to be organized? A cabinet. Now, what is the additional information that we are getting? The cabinet was stuffed to the brim, right? So this is what we call modifier, something which gives you an additional information or describes the subject or the verb, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now we could also have some prepositional phrases which act as modifiers. Say they give you the position of something. Like if I tell you, sit down beside me, right? So beside me, beside gives you the additional information where to sit down. Yeah. You reached on time. When did you reach? You reached on time, right? Suppose the boy who was at the store bought cookies. Now here, what is the clause? Now here we have a clause which is giving you an additional information, like we had in the first example also. Now, what is the main sentence over here? Now, when we talk about modifiers, one thing you will notice that even if we remove the modifier, you still have a complete sentence. So the boy bought cookies is a complete sentence. Now, if we add who was at the store, that also makes a complete sentence, right?
Yes.
So how can we identify a modifier? Number one, it is providing some additional information. And secondly, if it is not in the sentence is still making sense and is complete.
Yes.
Right? Say if we talk about please take a seat, that is complete sentence.
Yes.
Now, where to take a seat near me is added, it still is a complete sentence. Only it is giving you something addition. Yeah.
Yes.
So now that's how we would be identifying a modifier. So now your questions would be not about identifying the modifiers, but identifying the errors in modifiers, in the usage of modifiers. So all of the SAT questions are about identifying errors. Yeah. So all WL questions that you would be coming across would be to identify errors and choose the correct option. So correcting the sentences, editing, that is the main purpose of all the questions. Okay, so now keeping in mind that we have to be talking about errors, there are two types of errors that you would be coming across. One would be the dangling modifiers that we call, and the second would be the misplaced modifiers. Yeah. Now, what are dangling modifiers? These are the modifiers which may come in the beginning of a sentence. So say an additional information is there in the beginning of the sentence, and then we don't know who or what that additional information actually relates to. That is where the error comes in. Now, when we talk about misplaced modifiers, there would be additional information or modifiers which appear in the middle of the sentence somewhere, or even maybe at the end of the sentence. And again, now when we talk about faulty modifiers, why would they be faulty? There are two things which make them faulty. First is that now the rule for modifiers, if you know the rules where how modifiers are supposed to be used, then you will be able to identify whether it is used correctly or not. First is that the modifier should be next to what it is modifying. Yeah.
Yes.
Modifiers must always be next to what they are modifying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And they are always, as they will be matching the subject of the main clause of the sentence. So if they're next to what they're modifying, you should know what it is talking about.
Yes.
Yeah? And they should be as close as possible to the nouns they modify.
Yes.
So the subject of the main clause should be clear, and the nouns they are modifying should be clear.
Yes.
So keeping that in mind, we see what dangling modifiers actually are. Now, for dangling modifiers, we already said that they appear in the beginning of a sentence. Now, for any modifier, what did we say? That they should be next to what they are modifying, right?
Yes.
Now, coming to dangling modifiers, when will we say that the modifier is a dangling modifier? When the modifier is in the beginning of the sentence. Now there should always be a comma after it.
Yes.
Right? Now if there's a comma after it and the noun is placed right after the comma, then the error is not there. If there is no comma and the noun is not placed right after the comma, then you will be getting an error.
Yes.
So whenever you have a modifier in the beginning of the sentence, what do you have to look out for? A comma after the modifier, right?
Yes.
And the noun it pertains to right after the comma. Okay?
Yes.
Get a sentence. So we have this one. Coating the sidewalk, we trust through the heavy snow. Right? Now this is your modifier, coating the sidewalk.
Yes.
Now, and we trust through the heavy snow. Now, we is the noun. You have a comma over here. But now, what does we, does coating the sidewalk refer to we? Did we coat the sidewalk? So, what was on the sidewalk? We were walking, right? We trust through the heavy snow. Now, what were we doing? We trust through the heavy snow. Right?
Yes.
Were we coating the sidewalk or the snow was coating the sidewalk?
Yes.
So coating the sidewalk means what was covering the sidewalk?
Yes.
Were we covering the sidewalk or is the snow to cover the sidewalk.
Yes.
The snow is supposed to cover the sidewalk, right?
Yes.
So now we have to be able to rectify the error. Now either we bring the noun next to the modifier, or we take the modifier to the noun,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
we trust through the heavy snow. Now there are two subjects over here. We trust through the heavy snow. We trust should also be there. So we trust through the heavy snow, coating the sidewalk. That's how it makes sense, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's look at the next sentence. After being deflated, beaten and deflated, the baker shaped and seasoned the dough. Does this sentence make sense?
No.
No, right? So after being beaten and deflated, what should this refer to? It should refer to the dough.
Yes.
Instead, what is it referring to in the sentence? It's referring to the baker.
Yes.
Yeah. So after being beaten and deflated,
The
what
dough
would you say,
was
Radha? The dough was shaped and seasoned by the baker,
yes.
right? So now you see, if you have a modifier which is not placed properly, then the sentence itself makes no sense. So that's the way of identifying. So first we identify what the modifier is, then we see whether there's a comma after that, and even if there's a comma after that, whether the noun or pronoun that comes up after that fits in properly.
Yes.
Right? If it doesn't fit in properly, the entire sentence will have a different meaning. Okay, now let's look at this one. So, after long and tangled, it was difficult to comb the child's hair. So, what was long and tangled?
The child.
The child's hair, right? So, the
Yes.
child's hair should be placed near the modifier.
Yes.
So, long and tangled, the child's hair was difficult to comb. So, if you say it, we don't know what it is referring to.
Yes.
That becomes ambiguous. Yeah.
Yes.
Suppose we look at this one. Exhausted and weak, the soldiers' uniforms were covered in frost. So were the soldiers' uniforms exhausted and weak?
No.
Yeah.
The soldiers.
The soldiers were. So we would be modifying this sentence to bring out the exact meaning of the sentence. So the
Yes.
exhausted and weak, the soldiers were covered in frost. Even if we say the soldiers were covered in frost, it would be fine because the soldiers were wearing the uniforms. Yeah. So we can remove the uniforms, that would become a little redundant otherwise. And the sentence with only soldiers were covered in frost would also be correct.
Yes.
Right? So now when we are talking about fixing, okay, we'll continue with fixing the modifiers in our next session. In the meantime, you will go through all the rules that we have just done. Yeah, I think our next session with you will be on Saturday. Next Saturday, we'll see. I think it will be again at 6 o'clock. Or do you have a problem with the timings as such?
No, ma'am, I don't know about the next week. Like they give timetable on weekly basis, so I don't know if it would be class there or not on the next week.
Okay, so we'll figure out. The normal time that has been fixed for your classes is 6 to 8 in the evening.
Yes.
So you have to figure out whether 6 to 8 is okay or you need a change in time.
Ma'am, I will inform them.
Yeah, so you have to inform beforehand so that we can make adequate arrangements with the time.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so now we'll continue with the rest of the lesson next time. If you want, you can go through the rest of the lesson so that you will be able to understand a little better. It will become a little easier for you.
Yes.
Right? Okay then. So thank you for today. I hope whatever we did was clear.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Any doubts, you can write down your doubts. So when you are going through the lesson or going through the questions again, if you have any doubts, write them down so that you can ask me in the next session.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Okay then. Thank you so much.
Thank you.